everybody. It's Leslie here, Leslie the Little Plazic. Zazoo Plazz here for the Zazoo Plazz report for September 8th. It's last week. September 15th. We'll get through it. We'll get through it today. It's Monday, about 6. People coming home from work, slamming their doors and walking their dogs, and kids screaming, and I gotta find a place where I can be quiet. You know, there's quiet. I need quiet. All these people here, it's just, there's crows cawing. You know, it's pretty quiet, but you know, nature is noisy. You can never get away from it. You know, no matter what. Nature, and then, you know, I can feel the vibrations of the earth. You know, so there's no getting away from it. See, they call this the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross. So, you know, if you follow human design, I'm a right angle cross of the 4 ways. Everybody's got a cross. Mine is the 4 ways. So it's like the 4 seasons, you know, the 4 directions, that kind of thing. That's my vibe, you know. So I guess this would be kind of a time, you know, that I could relate to, because I'm a kind of attuned to balance. You know, I got that Libra ascendant. I want things to be fair, you know, and equal and balanced. I'm one of those people that if the tablecloth is longer on one side than the other, I'll stand back and try to get it. You know, and of course, Virgo is perfectionist season. So, you know, my mother was much more extreme about this, but, you know, ask my former spouse. If he, like, opened the blinds or the curtains or something, or somebody, one of the kids was messing with it, I'd go and I'd say, the curtains are long. They're more open on this side than that side. You know, he'd say, that's going to drive you crazy. You know, so friends of mine and roommates, people who've lived with me, right, over the years, I'm just going to share this little story before I get into the Bible stuff. People who've lived with me over the years, they know that, you know, I'm a good roommate because I help out and I'm clean and I pitch in and I cook. But certain things bug the crap out of me. And if people want to get on my last nerve, they know this. They know that I'm like this. And they'll just go, I'm like, all they have to do is light that one little spark, and I'll blow up like I used to. And this relates to the readings, of course. Because we even hear, you know, in the Old Testament, that God, you know, he has his limits. They portray him as a God that's, yes, slow to anger, but, you know, he says he turned back his anger and forgave them because he was a merciful God, the Israelites, the original, you know, in the Old Testament. But it's kind of like, you know, like a parent, right? You know that you can, well, I don't know about today, but for us kids growing up, you know, 70s, 80s, us Gen Xers, you knew that you could push your parents just so far. And there was that line that you would never cross because you knew that you would be bounced out on your butt. You knew that there would be consequences. You know, there would be lost TV privileges, you know, banishment to your room, and maybe worse. You know, at the very least, you get sometimes you get a smack on the fanny, on the behind, you know, and you lived in fear of that line that you would not cross, you know. I would know with my mom especially. My dad, I didn't want to cross him either. And I was a pretty good kid. I didn't, I didn't really do things that bothered him as much as I would say things. I think my mouth got me in more trouble. So these are all things that have come up today. These are relevant themes. My mouth. I would open my mouth and get myself in big trouble. And sometimes it would just be that I needed to let off some steam after school. Over the years, my mother and I sort of, we learned how to get around each other, and I learned how to, manage my energy, because I had a lot of energy as a kid, but I didn't really know how to manage it, and it's not like anybody would teach you how to handle your, you just kind of, I would just try things, and okay, that didn't work, so I won't do that again, but maybe sometimes I did anyway. But, it would take me a few times doing the same kind of stupid things. Not so much doing as saying, that I would say, okay, well, that wasn't a good idea. Maybe I won't say that again. But, and I'd make a note in my diary or something. It's something I said, sent my mother way off. I learned how far to go, and sometimes it wouldn't be anything I would say. It would be just the general, vibe that I would pick up. And if I didn't heed my intuition about certain things, I would step right in it, There would be the elephant in the room. And I could pick up on that, even as a little kid. I learned how to pick up on the thing in the room that nobody was talking about, whether it was with my extended family or my immediate family or, groups of friends or my parents' friends. You learn the things that you didn't say because there would be hell to pay if you said them. There would be repercussions. Yeah, and I'm not so sure kids today have that same kind of, sensitivity. I think maybe if they do have it, it's more, there's higher consciousness today. There's higher awareness. They probably slap some label on it and neuro something or other. But back then it was just, you're too sensitive. You think too much. Get over it. That was the attitude. And you didn't want people to think that you were, picking up on things. It was kind of like, your superpower, which is a lot of, and I'm realizing this is where Zazoo Plazz came from. After a lot of thought about this, it came to me that my superpower, well, one of them really is that emotional sensitivity, that being able to, see through people, sum them up, control my emotions and, read other people's emotions, and be able to tell them, sort of sum up, things that they might not see about themselves, situations. I get a good read. I got a good nose, but I get a good read on situations, and I can help people, to see things from a different, vantage point, and to make things, tidy things up and make them look better. That's what my boss, the commissioner at the environmental agency where I used to work, he once said, now Leslie, she kind of makes everything sort of look better, or she makes things, like I'll she'll do a PowerPoint, and she'll take something that someone else has done and just make it better. That's what he meant. He didn't mean anything about my personal appearance or anything like that. What he meant by look better, he sensed that, that if I was on the team, things would run more smoothly. They would just flow better. They would sound better. They would just feel better. Those are our senses, right? And I was always in tune with that in a work environment. I would often I was thinking about this today, how my boss and I, he's a Pisces. He was when I worked there, older than me by, 13 years or so, a boomer. But I'd be sending him, and I'd think of something, gee, I gotta tell him this. And I'd be drafting an email, and I'd be just ready to send it. And sometimes I would send it, and then 2 seconds later, I'd get an email from him with on the same exact topic, saying we should do this. And my email would say, I think we should do this. Don't forget, this has to be. And then he would send me a reminder, and I would send him, my thoughts at the same, they'd cross. And he'd be like, what the heck? So if I'm working with people and I'm close to them, people I'm working with, and this is Libra, so we're headed into Libra season, Mercury's going into Libra in a couple of days. It's in Virgo now, but it's headed into Libra. So that's Mercury in Libra. That's, sort of that give and take, having things, go both ways in relationship with other people, fairness, harmony. That's Mercury in Libra. So that's kind of like my focus today. I think that's what I've been picking up on. Of course, the moon's in Gemini. So that's kind of, that dual energy, too, of duality and details and kind of, that mind. Sun's still in Virgo, though. So, and Mars is in Libra. So there's that, too, Mars and Libra. So that's a feeling. Judgment is the other. Well, judgment is kind of more of a Sag thing. But Libra is the scales, So it's weighing things. Weighing our actions, maybe, it's not too much to report this week. I just been going through, trying to clean up things and tie up loose ends, and rather than I tried to kind of, do some long-range planning, and I just seemed spinning around in circles, and I said, that's not productive. Oh, and then show and tell for today. Here's my little snake friend. I just randomly picked it up yesterday on my bookcase. My kids, my boys, they had all these little toys and stuff we had like a little, stationary cabinet, plastic thing with drawers. And when the boys were in school, I put like pens in one, pencils in another one, and highlighters and markers in one, and then, of course, over the years, they all get mixed up, and the pencils go in the pen drawer, and then people throw in erasers and crap and, toys, and then, of course, boys, they have these little, like, rubber, and this is in my book, too, because my coworker at the environmental, she had a bunch of these, like, little rubber mice and snakes and bugs and things, and Scorpio, like me. And so, she, to break me in when I first got there, my very first day, I go to open the, there was like this overhead cabinet. It kind of lifted up in my cubicle. I had a little, little cubicle. And I went to put my purse and my lunch bag away. I lift this thing up, kind of lift it up, and then you pushed it in. And hanging there was this, I don't know whether it was hanging or if it was in the side drawer. I think there was one in the side drawer and something hanging. that when I pushed the drawer back, came launching out at me. It was kind of a snake or a mouse. I think it was a mouse. And she had rigged it so that it went flying in my face. I screamed, like, not really loud, but like, ah! And I hear laughing, cackling from the other side of the wall, the cubicle wall, because you know we didn't have open floor plan in this office. It was closed, like open on the top, but walls, and you could hear everything. But they were like those partitions, and I hear her cracking up over there, and I said, okay, this is who we're dealing with now. We're dealing with somebody like me. So when she left her desk, I took the thing and I went and I put it on her keyboard of her computer. And then I went back and started doing my things. And I tell the story in the book in a more descriptive way, longer way, but you can read more if you want. And then I come back and she of course she sees it. Eventually she sees it. You found my surprise, did you? I mean, if somebody did that now, can you imagine doing that now in a workplace? You'd be all over social media and people would be canceling you, and nobody has fun anymore. Do people have fun anymore? I mean, God, how serious. Life is not meant to be this serious, people. Have some fun. Oh, anyway. Yeah, I don't see anything like my videos and my creations. And I spend a lot of time perusing, YouTube and social media, just mostly Facebook. I don't get into those other ones because that's a rabbit hole I don't want to fall down, But, I said, I want to put out some stuff that I would want to watch, and maybe there's people out there who feel the same way. They're so sick of these fake AI generated, it's like eating the most bland food that there's this recurring image of people gorging themselves, right? On things that don't satisfy. And those are the things of the 3D, of the matrix, of the world. They're never going to satisfy, no matter how much money you have, no matter how nice your car or your house, your spouse or your life, your great title and everything. That stuff doesn't satisfy. It just doesn't. You're going to want more. You get sick of it and then you want more. But when you take the spiritual path, right? Those things that light you up, right? Though that thing that you do in the world that satisfies you to the point where you forget to eat and you forget to, sleep because you're so wired and excited. You feel good. You feel alive. Those are the things you got to spend your time on, because that's what God put you here for. Spirit put you here for, right? So this is my thing. Anyway, snake over here. So that's the theme today. We got snakes, and it's the year of the snake, and I'm born in the year of the wood snake, which only comes around every 60 years, which is why me, the pioneer, original Gen Xers here, we're all turning 60 this year. I'm not quite yet, but later in the year. So, we're getting ready for that and celebrating it. And because it's great. It's I think the 0 year is actually the last year of your 50s. So maybe 61 is really the first year of 60. But, yeah, so, so anyway, yeah, so we get, okay, Zazoo, get to the Bible, okay. But it's a symbol, okay? The snake, it's a symbol. And snakes have gotten a bad rap, in the Bible and in general. But snakes were revered, they're symbols of healing, and that staff that has the snake wrapped around it, that's a symbol of healing. Anyway, so it starts with the book of Numbers today in the Old Testament. So, which is a book of, it said it was a priestly redaction or an editing of a non-priestly book text. It's the fourth of the fifth book of the Hebrew Bible, the Pentateuch. So, in it, the Israelites, they're leaving Mount Sinai where they got the 10 Commandments from Moses on the mountain and everything. They're going to the Promised Land, right? Which is, but they're like, they're not having a lot of faith in God, right? They don't see the Promised Land right away. Does this sound like people today? No patience, no faith, right? Where is it? It's hot in the desert. No, what is this food we have? You're making us eat. So, God said, He threw them out in the wilderness. Get out of here, to wait for a new generation to come and take up the task. So this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Like the first people who were called, they were full of fear. They were afraid of everything. They were complaining about the accommodations. What's that saying? If someone asks you to get on a rocket ship, don't ask which seat, just get on, right? That's this, right? If you're on that damn rocket ship, you just thank your lucky stars you're on the rocket ship and eat whatever airline food you're given. Just don't complain. Anyway, so God sent them snakes, which bit the people, and then some of them died, and they're, so then they said, okay, Moses, we're sorry, take the snakes away. So then the Lord told Moses to put a bronze serpent on a pole, and, people can look at that and heal. If they've been bitten, they'll live. So he did that. So it's kind of like it's a redemption for the snake that was in the Garden of Eden, that's gotten such a bad rap over the years. But, the snake is very wise, very, intelligent. Symbol of healing, too. So the Psalm says, do not forget the works of the Lord. And this Psalm reading comes in with the Song of the Week. And basically saying, listen, God is revealing, our source is revealing the plan through parables, through this, in other words, for listening, God is always talking to us, right? Spirit is always talking, the universe. We just have to listen, open our ears, right? So the people, they forgot to put their trust in God, right? In the plan. They had made a covenant, an agreement, right? That's Libra. Libra is contracts, legal stuff, agreements, right? Oh, like Libra. But so they were supposed to be consistent and patient, right? And truthful, but they lied. It says, they spoke with their mouths, but their tongues lied, right? They were hypocrites. So they didn't walk their talk. But, God being merciful, it's okay, all right. And he bit his tongue. He held back anger, right? And then we have in that Paul to the Philippians. Okay, so it says Jesus, it's Saturn's in Pisces now. So Jesus emptied himself. So that's kind of Saturn and Pisces that's, going retrograde. Going back, Pisces is that emptying, So I'm thinking that Neptune in Aries, Neptune's in Aries, dissolution of the individual, kind of Neptune in Aries. So, but slaves. Virgo is that slavery energy, or Pisces too, service, um, mostly Virgo, I think. Service oriented, the sixth house. Said he took, though he was God, humans couldn't understand that he was God, right? So it said he humbled himself to look like us. So, he could act out how we should be in human form. He took human form, lowered himself, came down from the highest realms, and then, then he went back up. And so Jesus says to Nicodemus, John 3 in the Gospel, he says, only the Son of Man has gone up to heaven, right? From whence, from where he came. So it's, it says God, so there's symbols here, right? So like the serpent, Jesus was, that bronze serpent, right? That got raised up to heal people, to come and to heal that which was poison, that which led people to be, go astray, which is to go away from God, which is, what they called sin. So in other words, so Jesus came to save the world, to be that, the one, to be the example, to be held up, right? Not like an idol, to be worshipped, rather to, so that we could look at him, right, and be healed, just like the people looked at the bronze snake and were healed. That was an example. That was a symbol, right? God said to listen, notice these symbols, notice the parables, and take them. Don't take them at face value. Take them figuratively. So there's that. It's kind of like, when they make vaccines. What you're receiving is like the bite of the snake, which will heal you or prevent you from, your system will recognize that if you get bitten, right? And if you get that disease, you already have some in your body, so that will protect you from getting sick in the future, right? That's what this is. Kind of like a vaccine, right? Jesus was kind of like the vaccine. That's interesting. I never thought of that. Okay, so the song, it really fits in. I'm getting really good at doing this. I'm like, song, and all of a sudden I said, squeeze. Okay, so we just listened to this music. Back in the 80s, in the 90s, we didn't have Google lyrics or anything. You just listened to it. You didn't know what the artists looked like. You didn't know who wrote the song. You didn't, you didn't know anything about the band, about, anything. You just listened to the song, or you watched the music video, but you didn't know who the people were. You just watched the video. You liked the video. You liked the song. That was it. So, but apparently, okay, so I got two songs here. The first one was Tempted. Tempted by the fruit of another. That one, it only got up to number 49 on the U.S. Billboard. It was released in 1981. That's like one of their most famous songs. And let's see, Glenn Tilbrook and Chris Difford. They co-wrote the song. They were a new wave British band. And I had this friend, this boyfriend, who was in the MBA program with me. And he's a couple years older than me. So he's the one who introduced me to Squeeze. I hadn't really heard much of their other music, but he's like, "Oh, these guys are great. You gotta listen to Squeeze." So I think he gave me a cassette, and then I bought one or something. And when I went to work in Miami in 1991, I brought those cassettes with me because that's when I was in the MB, after grad school. I had those cassettes, and I would play them over and over. When I was driving around in Miami, I did a lot of driving. I went back and forth, one side to the other in Florida, in the southern Florida. I drove out to the Keys. So I remember I had to squeeze, cassettes that I played over and over and over, because that's all I had. So if I was out of range of the radio, I'd pop in one of my cassettes. I didn't have a CD player in my '87 Celica. So, so I think of him, his friend, who turned me on to squeeze. It didn't sound right. Anyway, the band. Anyway, so that Tempted, that was actually, and I didn't know this, they released a special Tempted '94 version on the soundtrack for Reality Bites, the movie, which is a Gen X movie, really. So, but it occurred to me that, it's like the Israelites were tempted also in the desert, but the truth was discovered. God discovered the truth. So I thought that would be good. Talk about that. Yeah. Anyway, so, but, yeah. Okay. Oh, their biggest U.S. single was Hourglass, and it got up to 15 on the Billboard because of the video, because of the MTV video. That's the kids like. That's us. We like the videos, That's what we would do. We would watch the videos more than just listen to the song, So, but then I'm going to throw in another song today. Sorry, meeting's so discreet. Yeah, so, the other one, this was our scene. No, this is the other song. Yeah, Trust Me to Open My Mouth was another song, and I think that's a good one. It was not released as a single in the U.S. It was from Babylon and On, September of '87. It was released, I think, in the UK as a single. But it's Psalm 78 today says, "I will open my mouth in a parable. They flattered him with their mouths." So I thought that was relevant to this. Trust me. In other words, the people. It's one of the lyrics says in the song, "This was our secret. Our meeting is so discreet." So, it said something about, "Oh, I loved you too much. I had to open my mouth. I had to say it." So, loose lips sink ships. So, in other words, the people had a secret. That God had a secret with the people. He had a discreet meeting with them. They had an agreement, right? And God loved us so much. So, Jesus, he kept trying to tell us. He kept trying to open his mouth. People didn't get it. So he sent Jesus, he sent his son, right? He had to keep coming down and trying because he loved us so much, right? So this is the vibe of the song, that this guy obviously loves somebody. He can't keep his mouth shut. He's got to open his big mouth, right? And tell everybody, how much, he loves this person or whatever. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That song, okay, so, is that? Yeah, that was a good one. So I'll let you, go and listen to that. I hadn't heard that, Trust Me to Open My Mouth. I don't think I'd ever heard that one, or maybe it's a while since I listened to it, because I think I had the cassette for that album. But anyway, so I guess I'm gonna slither away and go get my paleo hot chocolate snack with my cashew butter and rice cakes. The ants are still around. They seem to like the sweet stuff. So, yeah, but, maybe soon they'll all go away once it gets colder. It's still pretty warm out around here. So that's it for this week. So yeah, that's it for this week. I will be back. Have a great week. I guess this is, it's the week we're moving into Libra season. So the pumpkins are showing up on doorsteps and mums and things. So fall's coming. Get ready for pumpkin spice season. Till next week. I'll see you right here, same place, different time. Take care.